Welcome back. Let's be real. Women don't fall for men who try too hard. They fall for the man who doesn't need to try because his presence already speaks louder than his words ever could. This isn't about tricks, lines, or pretending to be high value. It's about mastering the psychology of emotional tension, mystery, and masculine restraint, the things her subconscious notices before she even realizes it. You want to seduce her? Don't flood her with attention. Don't tell her how different you are. Be different and let her feel it. In this video, we're breaking down 8 quiet but powerful ways to make her crave you, not because you chased her, but because you made her lean in. Rooted in Stoic discipline, backed by psychology, and executed in silence. Number 1. The man who doesn't age. How resilience becomes your secret weapon. You've seen him before, the man who's been through hell, but somehow walks into a room like he just returned from a quiet vacation. There's something different about him. It's not just his posture or the steady way he speaks. It's that he doesn't wear his pain on his skin. He doesn't carry the world on his face. While others seem drained from life's chaos, he looks alive, not untouched, but unfazed. It's easy to think youthfulness comes from luck, skincare, or good genetics. But the deeper truth? It's resilience, the ability to face stress without letting it consume you. The kind of resilience that doesn't just protect your mind, it preserves your soul's glow. You don't crumble, you adapt. And that changes everything. Psychologically, this isn't magic, it's biology. Chronic stress raises cortisol, and cortisol eats away at vitality. It deepens lines, weakens muscles, and dulls your spirit. You see it in the eyes of people who've been surviving instead of living, but not in the ones who take the hit and keep moving with grace. According to Sapolsky's research, it's emotional resilience, not circumstance, that separates those who age fast from those who don't. Think about a man who loses his job. Most spiral panic, shame, isolation. But another one, maybe you, sits with the loss, journals every night, and writes, "This isn't the end. This is refinement." He processes, reflects, and shows up to the next social gathering, not as a victim, but as a man reforging his purpose. That man still radiates, because he didn't lose himself in the fall. And this is where Stoicism enters like an ancient warrior, whispering in your ear. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That single sentence is the foundation of emotional resilience. You don't control what happens, but you control your framing of it. And that framing is the armor your spirit wears. It protects your energy, it protects your face. Yes, literally. Less cortisol, fewer wrinkles, more glow. Call it nature's reward for not reacting like a child every time life says no. So what do you do with this knowledge? You build your own rituals of resilience. You journal not as a self-help hobby, but as a disciplined mirror. 5 minutes every night. Not to vent, but to name the lesson. Today, she ignored me. I wanted validation. Instead, I gave it to myself. These entries don't just rewire your mind. They teach your body that you are safe, even when things go wrong. You breathe before you speak. You walk before you react. You accept that failure, heartbreak, even betrayal, none of it gets to write your story unless you let it. That's what makes a man unforgettable. Not just his ambition or charm, but the fact that pain doesn't ruin him. It refines him. Women notice it. They may not articulate it as resilience, but they feel it. In your eyes, in your calm, in your refusal to be shaken. You become the man who anchors the room when everyone else is spinning, not because you've had it easy, but because you didn't let hard times break your inner frame. The world ages people fast. Drama, ego, reaction, they steal time from your face. But presence, perspective, and peace, they preserve you. And the men who master that become rare. Not just ageless, but timeless. So don't just fight stress. Transcend it. Let it shape you quietly without visible scars. Let it polish you into a man whose energy outlives the chaos he's endured. Because the glow of a resilient man is not youth, it's earned light. And that's something no storm can steal. Number 2. Guard your flame. Why she must earn your attention. It starts with a glance. a smile that lingers, a message that says, "Hey, stranger," and for most men, that's all it takes. They light the fire. They flood her with validation, praise, approval, as if one spark of interest means she deserves the whole bonfire. But here's the twist that flips the dynamic. When you give too much too soon, you rob her of the one thing that builds real desire investment. See, people value what they work for. It's human nature. Whether it's building a career or winning someone's heart, effort breeds attachment. If she gets your attention for free, she'll treat it like junk mail. Glance at it, maybe smile, then toss it aside. But if she earns it through curiosity, through patience, through consistency, suddenly it matters. She holds it closer. She starts to protect it. This doesn't mean playing games. It means balance. If she texts, respond with thought, not need. You don't have to be cold, just conscious. Ask yourself, did she actually try to connect? Or is this just bait to see if I'll chase? Most men fall at that line. But the ones who stand still, the ones who wait to see if she'll step forward too, those are the ones she remembers. Here's the psychology behind it. Robert Cialdini called it the principle of commitment and consistency. The more someone invests time, energy, emotion, the more they align their identity with that choice. If she has to initiate, if she has to wonder what you're thinking, if she has to hold space for your energy instead of managing it, she's investing. And once she's invested, attraction deepens. Not because you did anything flashy, but because you respected your attention enough to let her earn it. So when she flirts, don't trip over yourself to be charming. Say something grounded. Something like, "I like your vibe, but I'm curious what else you're about." Then let silence stretch a little. Let her decide if the conversation continues, because in that pause is power. In that space is where she either steps in or steps back. And either way, you stay rooted. This is where Stoic thought becomes a compass. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Act with virtue, not for reward." Your attention isn't a prize to be handed out. It's a reflection of your values, of your self-respect. If you give it without cause, you cheapen it. But if you guard it like something sacred, she begins to see it that way too. Most men think winning her is about showing how much you care, but that only works if she cares first. And she won't care deeply until she's been given a reason to. That reason is you, not your attention, not your praise, but your restraint, your ability to stay centered when she's used to men losing themselves. Train yourself to delay. Let her messages sit. Let your replies come from presence, not pressure. Focus on your work, hit the gym, read, build. The more solid your world becomes, the more gravity you carry. And women are drawn to gravity more than noise. When you stop chasing, you don't become passive. You become selective. You create a standard. And standards are rare. They force her to rise, to participate, to earn. And when she does, the connection that follows is rooted in something real, something mutual, something powerful. So guard your flame. Don't let a smile or a message be enough to set it ablaze. Let her come close enough to feel the heat, but only if she brings wood to the fire. Number 3, the mystery that keeps her awake. Attraction dies the moment she figures you out. Not because she stops liking you, but because the game becomes too easy. Predictability is comfortable, but comfort rarely sparks desire. When a woman knows what you'll say, when you'll text, and how you'll respond to every mood swing she throws your way, you become emotional wallpaper, familiar, safe, unremarkable. Now flip the script. Imagine her leaning in, asking with a mix of curiosity and tension, "Where is this going?" Most men rush to reassure. They deliver the classic, "I really like you and I want this to work" speech. But that moment, if not handled with subtle restraint, becomes the death of her curiosity. Because what she really wants isn't certainty, it's emotional presence with ambiguity. A man grounded enough not to define everything. A man who can stay in the moment without folding under the pressure to label it. This is where the Zeigarnik effect kicks in. It's the psychological tendency to remember incomplete experiences more intensely than completed ones. In relationships, that means tension, when held properly, keeps her emotionally invested. When you resist the urge to over-explain, to define, to label, you give her the one thing she can't stop thinking about: the unknown. It's not about being cold, it's about being deliberate. Let's say she sends a bold, flirty message. Most guys would match the energy instantly, an avalanche of emojis and over-eagerness. But what if you simply replied, "That's bold. Tell me more next time," and then disappeared into your evening workout or your book? You're not rejecting her. You're not playing a game. You're showing her you have a life that doesn't revolve around her every word. And ironically, that makes you more magnetic. A man who keeps space between her question and his answer is a man who knows how to lead emotionally. Because here's the truth, her imagination is far more powerful than your explanations. When you leave space, she fills it. And what she fills it with is far more intriguing than anything you could script. The moment you give her all the answers, she stops asking questions. And when she stops asking questions, she stops caring. Epictetus once said, "Speak only what is necessary." That's not a call to be silent. It's a call to be intentional. When you say less, each word carries more weight. When you respond calmly instead of reactively, she feels the emotional contrast. When you show that you're unbothered by ambiguity, she trusts your frame and tests you less. Modern dating is flooded with men desperate to be understood. But the man who leaves room to be wondered about? He's rare. And rare is attractive. Practice being comfortably silent after tension. Let the unknown hang in the air without rushing to relieve it. Spend more time developing your own interests, reading, building, training, so your energy doesn't orbit hers. And when she asks where it's going, don't give her a map. Give her a compass. Let her feel that you're grounded and that the direction doesn't need to be named right now. Because when she doesn't quite know what page you're on, but she feels safe reading the story, you become the chapter she reopens at night, trying to decode every word, not because you played games, but because you knew the real secret. Emotional restraint isn't distance, it's depth, and that's what keeps her coming back. Number 4, stories that stir her soul. There's a reason she leans in when you tell a story, not because of what happened, but because of how it made you feel. That pause before you mention the rain, the flicker in your eyes when you recall the moment. She's not listening for facts. She's listening for something real, something that touches a place in her she forgot was there. You could say, "I like traveling," and she'll nod politely, maybe smile, then forget it 5 minutes later. But say, "It was in Lisbon, raining hard. I was alone in a jazz bar, and this old man next to me said, 'You look like someone who forgot why he left home.'" And suddenly her world goes quiet. She's not thinking anymore, she's feeling. And in that space, you become unforgettable. That's the power of emotional storytelling. Not loud, not dramatic, but honest, raw, and oddly specific, because that specificity triggers something deep in her brain. As Luann Brizendine explains, women's brains are wired for emotional resonance. They don't just hear what you say, they feel it, internalize it, turn it over in their minds long after the moment passes. This is why stories aren't just entertainment. They're connection, they're intimacy without pressure, vulnerability without oversharing. The best stories don't impress her, they invite her in. You talk about a hike where the silence got too loud, and you realized how little of your life was actually yours. You let that hang, no punchline, just breath. Then ask, "Ever felt like that?" That kind of question doesn't chase approval. It opens space. Space for her to show you her emotional world if she trusts you. And trust starts with how you carry your own truth. Seneca said, "Speak as you live," not to be praised, but because the words are real, because they cost you something. When a man tells a story that shows he's wrestled with something, regret, uncertainty, a shift in how he sees the world, he's giving her a map. Not to impress, to connect. And most men won't go there. They either hide behind logic, listing their resume of experiences, or overshare in a way that seeks validation. Both miss the point, because what she remembers is how your story made her feel, not what it was about. You don't need to be a great speaker. You need to be sincere. You need to slow down. Let the moments land. Let silence do its work. Because silence after truth is louder than any compliment. If you want to build this muscle, start small. Share a personal memory with a close friend. Describe the air, the colors, what you felt. Watch their eyes. Notice how they shift from listening to feeling. That's your cue. And when you're with her, don't just answer her questions. Give her something to remember, not with flair, but with quiet power, the kind that lingers. Because in a world full of noise, it's the man who speaks like he means it, and then lets it breathe, who owns the room without trying. That's how you stir her soul, not with the volume of your words, but with the depth behind them. ChatGPT Janoi. Number 5. Let it land, then let it linger. Most men talk too much, especially when the moment turns emotional. They feel the urge to fill the silence with explanations, jokes, reassurances, anything to avoid sitting in the tension. But tension is where intimacy grows, and the man who can show depth, then step back, owns a power most never discover. When she shares something raw, a fear, a memory, a moment of doubt, she's not asking for solutions. She's looking for reflection, resonance, something that tells her you get it, not with sympathy, with shared depth. You could say, "Yeah, I know that feeling," and move on. Or you could offer something that comes from your soul. Something simple, real, like "I've felt invisible in a crowd before." Then say nothing else. Just stop there. Let the silence do the talking. Let your presence fill the space where most men would rush to impress or fix. Because what she remembers is not just what you said, but how confidently you didn't follow it up with noise. That absence is power. It's rare. It's magnetic. According to the scarcity principle in psychology, what's limited becomes valuable. So when you speak truthfully and then disappear for a while, no follow-up texts, no extra comments, just space, your presence expands in her mind. She starts replaying the moment, wondering what it meant, what else is behind your eyes. That curiosity builds attachment, not because you chased, but because you trusted the depth of your words to do the work. This isn't manipulation, it's emotional leadership. Cialdini showed that contrast makes things more desirable. So when your vulnerability is followed by calm silence instead of needy pursuit, you create contrast. You show her you're not afraid of connection, but you're not dependent on it either. Marcus Aurelius said, "Let your words be enough." In a world of oversharing and instant gratification, this is radical advice. It demands restraint, emotional discipline, but it also demands you speak with weight when you do choose to speak. So when you share, don't perform, don't try to impress, just tell the truth and trust it to land. This is where your practices off the field matter. Meditation, journaling, self-respect. Because if you don't know how to sit with your own emotions, you'll never hold space for hers. And if you can't go silent without spiraling, you'll always overcompensate. That's why you walk away after a deep moment, not out of strategy, but out of inner stability. Focus on your craft, your health, your mission. Let her feel your presence not through words, but through the steady rhythm of your life. When she sees you aren't chasing, she begins leaning in, because emotional depth that stands still is unforgettable. Number 6. The power of tiny moments that linger. In the chaos of modern dating, where texts fly fast and attention spans collapse, what actually makes you memorable isn't what you said in paragraph 5 of your goodnight text. It's the flicker of a glance you held too long, the random phrase you used once that somehow stuck in her head like a melody, or the way you noticed she wasn't quite herself that one evening and simply asked, "What's on your mind?" Then let the silence take care of the rest. These are what we call emotional anchors, small, vivid, emotionally loaded cues that bypass logic and embed themselves in memory. According to Goleman's work on emotional intelligence, these anchors are what bond people, not big declarations or grand gestures, but those subtle hits of resonance that say, "You're seen, and I'm still here." You don't need a speech. You need presence. A calm, tuned-in awareness that spots the energy shift in a room or the weight behind her smile. And instead of reacting like every other guy trying to fix it, or flood her with compliments, you anchor that moment by being still, curious, and real. You say something like, "You feel a bit quieter today." Then you let her come toward the silence you created. This isn't some magic trick. It's how memory and emotion naturally work. When you connect an experience to a specific feeling, her brain stores it as meaningful. The Zeigarnik effect keeps it active if it's unresolved. So when she walks away from your interaction and still feels something hanging in the air, you become the reference point. Think about the guy she can't forget. He wasn't necessarily the richest or best looking. He was the one who left her with unresolved feelings tied to moments that felt unexpectedly deep. Maybe he read her favorite line from a book and said, "That's what I thought about when I first saw you." Or he called her out gently when she was hiding behind a laugh. That becomes the hook. So how do you build these moments without trying too hard? Be present. Listen like the conversation matters more than the outcome. Pay attention to things she says that most people miss. And when something hits, don't overplay it, just let it linger. Your restraint becomes part of the emotional anchor. Your stillness under pressure, as Seneca pointed out, becomes something she leans on subconsciously. Ironically, it's not what you do when you're trying that makes her remember you. It's what happens when you're relaxed, intentional, and responsive. When your energy says, "I'm here, I see you, but I don't need anything from this moment except to be in it." So skip the fireworks. Master the flicker. Say something simple and true. Then walk away and let it echo in her mind. That's how emotional anchoring works. That's how you make her feel something she doesn't quite understand but never forgets. Number 7. The seductive power of the unsaid. If you want to truly haunt her thoughts, don't give her everything. Give her silence, give her gaps, give her just enough to wonder. The male instinct, especially when interested, is to impress, explain, over-clarify. You tell stories like you're pitching a resume. Every detail, every conclusion, every reason you're worthy of her attention, laid out like a PowerPoint slide. But that's not how attraction works. That's how interviews work. Attraction thrives in tension. It feeds on what isn't said. When she asks, "What made you choose this path?" and you reply, "It's a mix of silence and something I haven't named yet," you create space room for her mind to fill in the blanks. And she will. This isn't manipulation, it's biology. The Zeigarnik effect, discovered in 1927, proves that our minds are wired to return to unfinished stories. Unresolved details occupy more mental space than the ones that are complete. So if your words leave a trail but never the full map, she stays curious. She keeps thinking about you long after the conversation ends. Mystery isn't withholding, it's pacing. You're not being evasive, you're being intentional. In practical terms, stop narrating your entire life. Don't post your every move on social media. When you're with her, say things like, "There's more to that, but I'll tell you another time." Then change the subject. Not to tease, but to build subtle gravity. This is how you get her to lean in. There's power in contrast. You might share one deep insight, then fall quiet. Maybe after opening up about your past, you smile and say, "Some stories feel better when they unfold slowly." That's the moment she starts chasing not just you, but the parts of you you're still holding close. Stoic wisdom understood this long before psychology did. Epictetus taught that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Speak less, listen more. Let your restraint do the talking. A man who can sit in silence without discomfort is a man in command of himself, and that's magnetic, especially when every other guy is trying to overcompensate with noise. So hold back not out of fear, but out of strength. Don't rush to fill every pause. Don't explain every feeling. Don't complete every sentence. Because when you leave a gap, her imagination rushes to meet it, and in that space you become more than a man. You become a story she hasn't finished yet. Number 8. Train her brain to crave you. You don't need to chase her. You just need to trigger her nervous system. The truth is, most men overplay their presence. They respond instantly, show up constantly, and make themselves endlessly available. and in doing so, they flatten their emotional value like a song played on repeat, until no one hears the melody anymore. But if you want to become unforgettable, don't flood her senses, stimulate them, then disappear. It's not about manipulation. It's about understanding the way her brain works. Neuroscientific research shows that dopamine, the neurotransmitter tied to craving, is released not by consistency, but by unpredictability. In other words, it's not the attention itself that triggers desire. It's the uncertainty of when and how that attention shows up. So, let her feel the high of your presence and then give her space to miss it. You might send her a text like, "Just passed by the weirdest street musician, reminded me of your laugh." Then you don't text for hours, maybe even a day. The silence isn't punishment, it's the tension between stimulus and reward. And if she's drawn to you, that tension becomes addictive. This is what builds psychological gravity. She starts anticipating your energy, your words, your presence. Every message from you becomes an event. Every silence becomes a space she wants to fill. But here's the paradox. You can't fake this if you're obsessing over her. Your absence must come from a place of presence with yourself. That's why the Stoics preach discipline not just in action, but in attention. Epictetus said, "Control what you present." It means be deliberate with your energy. Don't give it away freely just because she smiled at your story. This is where most men fail. They get one signal of interest and suddenly they're bending their whole schedule around her. They lose their mystery, they lose their edge, and she loses interest. Instead, stay rooted in your mission. Use her text as a spark, not a leash. Finish your workout, refine your craft. Take your time before responding, and when you do, bring value, not neediness. She'll notice. She'll feel the difference between a man who needs her attention and a man who chooses when and how to give his. And that choice, that restraint, is what makes her crave you. Desire isn't built on saturation, it's built on suspense. When you become the unpredictable high-value reward in her life, her brain links your presence to emotional spikes. Not because you said something groundbreaking, but because you created moments that felt rare. And rarity, in a world flooded with noise, becomes irresistible. So don't try to impress her constantly. Impress her occasionally, intentionally, and then let the silence do the rest. Because when you master emotional timing, you don't just capture her attention. You train her to need it. Attraction isn't loud. It's not made in texts, gifts, or declarations. It's built in the moments when you could react but choose not to. When you speak less, she fills the silence with curiosity. When you stay grounded, she leans forward. When you're unpredictable but centered, you hijack her emotional circuitry without ever raising your voice. That's the power of masculine restraint. That's the psychology of seduction through presence, not performance. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more breakdowns like this. And leave a comment below. Stillness seduces, noise repels. Because at the end of the day, she doesn't remember what you said. She remembers how she felt in your presence. And that, my friend, is where the real attraction begins.